Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we are actually talking about Twitter, Facebook, Microsoft, and YouTube because they're going to start targeting extremist manifesto or attacker manifestos, and here's what's going on. This is interesting. I have a ton of thoughts on this actually, and it's coming from Reuters. Now, a counterterrorism organization formed by Twitter, Facebook, Microsoft, and YouTube basically is significantly expanding the types of extremist content shared between these companies in a key database, aiming at cracking down on material from white supremacists and far-right militias, according to this group talking to Reuters, where I'm getting this information from. Until now, the Global Internet Forum to Counter Terrorism, that's GIFT, G-I-F-C-T, GIFT, I guess, their database has focused on videos and images from terrorist groups on the United Nations list, so far has largely consisted of content from Islamist extremist organizations such as the Islamic State or ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and others of that ilk. Now, over the next few months, the group will now add attacker manifestos often shared by sympathizers after white supremacist violence and other publications, and links flagged by the United Nations initiative Tech Against Terrorism. It will use lists from intelligence sharing group Five Eyes, that's 5 large companies, United States, UK, Australia, etc., that are sharing this intelligence, and they're adding URLs and PDFs from more groups, including groups like the Proud Boys, the Three Percenters, and neo-Nazis. Now, here's how this is essentially going to work. Assume for a moment I am one of these people in these groups. I am an attacker. I'm an extremist. Assuming I make a video or a post, let's say with my manifesto, basically what they consider extremist, this is what's going to happen. So let's say I use YouTube to post my manifesto out there. YouTube will tag my post and share hashes, which is a unique numerical representation of the original post or piece of content that was removed from YouTube's service. And so YouTube will basically give me a unique identifier on my manifesto video, and then the other platforms that have access to this will then use that unique identifier looking for the same content on their own sites in order to either review it themselves or remove it. So if I post my manifesto on YouTube, Facebook can instantly pick that up, look at their platform, see if I've posted the exact same thing. And if you're watching this video, I basically put it on YouTube, but you might be watching it on Facebook or LinkedIn or, so by virtue of that, this is what they're talking about here. And so basically it's a way for these massive platforms to quickly find extremist content. But remember, it's only basically used by the platforms that are signed up for this. Currently, according to Reuters, there are 14 that can access this now. So outside of Twitter, Facebook, Microsoft, and YouTube, there's Reddit, Snapchat owner Snap, Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, Verizon Media, and Microsoft's LinkedIn, and also the sharing service, the file sharing service, Dropbox. So basically, if I post or I save that file of my video manifesto onto Dropbox, they're going to have that unique hash. They'll be able to compare it essentially to YouTube or any one of these other platforms. It's joint intelligence sharing, as extremists post information. So while the project reduces the amount of extremist content on mainstream platforms, basically groups or individuals can still post violent images and rhetoric on many other sites that are parts of the internet that are not sharing this kind of intelligence. So you can think of smaller social media platforms like Parler, MeWe, like all of these other places where you can go, not to mention like 8chan, now 8kun, like, all those kinds of things. They're obviously not part of this. This is only on the massive platforms that are out there. Obviously, TikTok, I didn't see them on the list either, although I don't think they are, to be perfectly honest, because I went looking at the GIFT website, to see this. Now, that group also has faced criticism and concerns from some human and digital rights groups over centralized and overbroad censorship. Meaning they are pulling all of this information, they might be censoring somebody, and I think that's the real debate here, for this. It's not that joint intelligence sharing works. I mean, if you've got an extremist and they're motivated, we really want to find that person before they do harm to others, but it's one thing, and hear me out here, it's one thing for me to say something like, quote, I hate the government and I want it to be destroyed, versus I am going to destroy it and I'm going to do it on X date. Do you see the difference here? And I think that's one of those things where we can get into trouble. Manifestos can have a bit of a gray area. So unless somebody's explicitly stating threats against someone, some entity, some government, etc., should it be taken down? Now, if I recall, and I could be mistaken here, but I believe this is correct, and somebody will correct me because they've probably read it, and I read it years ago. The Unabomber, his manifesto, Ted Kaczynski's manifesto, called for the end of consumerism in society, but if I recall, it didn't explicitly say that he, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, basically, and he called himself FCP or something like that, he wasn't going to actually, he didn't say he was going to blow up people, he just did. I could be correct in that. I'd love somebody to basically, as I'm thinking about this off the top of my head, if somebody knows that answer, that would be great. But think about it this way. If the Unabomber's manifesto didn't actually say that he was intent on blowing somebody up or was going to do this kind of damage, and he had access to the internet like we have access to the internet, which you didn't have nearly like this in the early 90s and before when he was actively killing people, would this have mitigated his desire to bomb people a little bit? He's obviously very mentally disturbed. Nobody's denying that. The other concern here is maybe that if he didn't, maybe he said, "Oh, everybody's reading my manifesto, no reason to bomb the planet," But could he have also inspired other people to violent action on his behalf? And where's the gray line? I don't think we'll honestly ever know that answer. Obviously, he was caught before the social media era took place, and he is currently sitting in Supermax in Colorado for the rest of his life, where he rightfully belongs. And I'm definitely, for the record, not advocating violence here in any which way, shape, or form. But I think this is an interesting free speech quandary here, and I think we keep kicking the can down the road and not really addressing it, except to simply ban it, which is ticking off, let's say, the free speech people that aren't necessarily writing manifestos advocating violence or the destruction of anything. And I think that's something that really we have to adjudicate. We have to understand. A society like the United States and many other societies out there on the planet have free speech. We can't do things like yell fire in a crowded theater because obviously that would cause a stampede and basically make people to harm, but cause people to be harmed. But the point is not yelling fire in a crowded theater. The point is you can't really lie about those kinds of things. And when we have a whole bunch of misinformation and disinformation that's demonstrably false, that is potentially harming people in whatever standard that is, do we have a very serious problem here with this? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that because I can see both sides of the coin here, and I think it's important for people to be able to feel like they have the ability to speak. But note the difference of I hate something and I advocate for it to go away versus I hate this and I'm going to destroy it. I'm going to blow it up. I'm going to harm it. And those are two very distinct things. And I think sometimes it's a fine line, but it's something that I think we as a society really need to have a discussion on. So with that, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Again, in no way, shape, or form am I ever on any of these podcasts, videos, whatever, advocating for violence or extremism or anything like that. I think if you've watched this stuff, watched me or listened to me over the years, you know that is the case. I have a radio show on public radio, for God's sakes, but I think it's an important discussion to actually have. And if we can't have the tough discussions in society, then we kind of lose as society. And so that's my final point. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, where apparently you will be hashed and put into a database if you're an extremist. And please feel free to subscribe to me on YouTube as well, where you will be hashed and tagged as an extremist if you post extremist content. And as always, stay safe, stay online, please stay private, and also be excellent to each other. Thanks, everyone.